Now, I am very proud of Bill 1. Now, Bill 1 is it's great for teachers, and it's great for students, and it's fantastic for all the parents who live in my riding as well. When I was running for election, I heard from many families who asking me, I know there's a lot of noise coming from the other side, but I'll try to speak a bit louder while they try to have their little side conversations. I was proud to stand on the doorstep and talk to families in my constituency of Calgary-Hawkwood about reducing school fees. And that was top of mind for many parents and young parents in my ridings who have always had troubles paying those bills. And to be quite honest, my family could have greatly benefited from having a reduction in school fees. In 1996, I'm going to date myself, I was 2 years old in 1996, and my parents got divorced. So with that, I see the clerk just holding his head in his hands because I know I am fairly young. However, in 1996, my parents did get divorced. For me, I didn't notice. I was 2 years old. I was going to preschool at the time. I have two older siblings who were both going to school. And for my mom, who was a teacher, who recently separated, and my grandmother died later that year, it was very difficult for her to pay those school fees. As a teacher, my mom took a large pay cut because of the cuts from Ralph Klein. And because of those cuts, she was worried about putting food on the table. She was worried about clothing us and feeding us. And then to have these school fees right in September, when all of us were trying to go to school, and I didn't know any different, because, again, too. But my sister was telling me that it was very emotional. She remembers my mother crying, trying to figure out how she was going to pay these school fees, how she was going to feed and clothe us while trying to go through a divorce. And that's an incredible hardship to go through. And as a teacher, she felt she needed to pay those school fees. She felt like if she signed the form saying she couldn't afford those school fees, it was going to reflect poorly on her and therefore reflect poorly on Alberta education. And she didn't want to do that, even though it would have greatly helped us. But I wouldn't say she was too proud to do it, but in the long run, she was probably embarrassed because she didn't want to do that. She didn't want what the opposition calls a handout. Even though it's not a handout, it's more of a hand up, because those school fees are very burdensome. They are very difficult to pay, and that's why I'm so proud of Bill 1, which will finally reduce school fees at least 25% for a majority of Albertans. And being a public servant and going to schools with kids who are in classrooms of over 40 kids. When I was in high school, in my English class, if every child showed up, there weren't enough chairs. Somebody had to either stand or sit on the ground. And that was directly because of the cuts from the previous government. Those were directly from the cuts from the 90s and early 2000s that they put in place, cutting salaries of teachers, and then on top of that, cutting resources for schools, cutting resources for hospitals and nurses, and almost every public service in this province took a cut just because they wanted to balance the budget for no other reason than to be able to hold up a sign that said, "We balance the budget." Balancing the budget means nothing if you have crumbling infrastructure, if you have crumbling schools, and if your classrooms are too large to even be able to teach all the children that are in those schools. So I am so proud to be part of a government that is careful of schools, that is making sure that all schools are funded equally, that making sure that all schools are funded properly, making sure that hospitals are not crumbling, making sure we're not destroying hospitals. That's also another important thing, is destroying things that we desperately need. I don't see why there was a reason to destroy the Calgary Hospital. It's a little bit off topic, sorry, I'm just kind of going off. But destroying the Calgary Hospital is kind of a giant metaphor for what the Klein government did to my family and to many Albertans. The Calgary General Hospital. And that's something I never want to see in this province again. I ran to make sure that Alberta education was fully funded, to make sure that when children go to school, they feel safe and cared for, to make sure that teachers feel respected by their government, and to make sure that teachers have enough resources to teach students. These aren't people that go to work just for an extra paycheck. They go to work because they care about the students. They go to work because they really want to make this province a better place, and that was the way they could do it. So cutting teachers, cutting resources for schools, that is something that I will never want to do as an MLA, and I never plan on doing that as an MLA. Now, the previous government had a huge culture of disrespecting students and teachers. I remember back when I was in high school, Madam Chair, I received a letter from the then Education Minister, which was Thomas Lukazik. And he sent this to every student in the province. It said, if you have any ideas of how to improve Alberta education, of how to help us move forward, please send them. Either email us or phone us or tweet us, and we'd be happy to receive those ideas. So then I, being a budding grade 11 student, or 12, I don't know exactly which year it was now, decided to tweet at then Minister Lukazik and tell him exactly what I think would be great for Alberta education. And I know the member for Calgary Lougheed just yelled out names. However, because he's a previous member, not a current member, I'm allowed to use his name.
Not his first day. Not his first day.
So, I received that letter from Mr. Lukazik. I sent out about 5 tweets saying what we need to do to improve Alberta education. I put things like repeal Bill 44, which made it a human rights violation for teachers to talk about sexual orientation, sexuality, or religion in the classroom without having written permission from a parent, which really, in reality, was homophobic and discriminatory against LGBTQ+ Albertans. On top of that, I said to add resources for schools, to build more schools so when I go to school, I don't have to sit in a classroom with 40 other kids with people sitting on the floor. And then I said a bunch of other things. And then he replied to me, that was a large number of tweets. Did you save time for homework? And it just showed how that government did not care about students and did not actually care about the ideas of youth. He was politically posturing about why, saying that we care about education, we care about what you have to say, but in reality, he just wanted to send a letter to say that he's the Minister of Education. And I could not stand that. And that is why I ran for politics. I ran in politics so I could put bills forward like Bill 1, support Bill 1, because that is what we need in this province. We need more things like Bill 1. We need to help parents. We need to help teachers and nurses and students and all Albertans to help them have a real education, whether it be advanced education or not a regular education, but grades K to 12 education. It's very important that we actually put these bills forward, that we give a hand up to these parents and make sure that these students and these schools are not treated the same way that they were treated by the previous government. So thank you, Madam Chair. I'll have my seat now.